Today's video is brought to you by Marvel's Midnight Suns, and we're going to go over a little bit of the history of Carol Danvers. You see, Carol Danvers has had a long career in Marvel Comics, appearing as several different superheroine personas throughout the years, yet it seems that only recently has she begun to dip into the magical side of the Marvel Universe. So let's look a little bit more into her past so that we can talk about her present magical situation. My name is Benny, you might know me as the Comicstorian, and we're going to get you up to date on one of the heroes of Marvel's Midnight Suns. Now, Carol Danvers in the comics is a strong woman who has had a problem with authority, usually solving her problems by hitting them very hard. However, the character wasn't always written this way. You see, Carol would first appear as a supporting character for Marvel, making her debut in Marvel Superheroes number 13 in 1963. She was shown to be an Air Force officer and colleague of Marvel, and comics have made major strides in creating more complex women since this time period. It was later in the series that Carol was mutated when Marvel tried to protect her from an explosion. This would lead to her gaining her superpowers. And after she gained them, Carol would take on the persona of Miss Marvel, appearing for the first time in Miss Marvel number 1 in 1977. Now an increasingly powerful hero, she would have many adventures. Eventually, she would become a member of the Avengers, as well as work alongside the Defenders, X-Men, Spider-Man, and Iron Man. Her character would fight supervillains as well as fight against discrimination and battle for equal rights for women. The character would then go on to have crazy adventures, including 2 different bouts of amnesia, leading her own Avengers team and taking on the personas of Warbird and Binary. Carol wouldn't actually take on the mantle of Captain Marvel until 2012. After getting a new costume, she is convinced to take up the iconic role of Captain Marvel, though this wouldn't be the first time that she is called Captain Marvel. The first time was actually in an alternate timeline, but we'll get to that, don't worry. Now, Carol has fought against numerous threats, both on Earth and in the vastness of space. She doesn't have a dedicated rogues gallery in the traditional sense. Some of her most major villains have been the mutants Mystique and Rogue, yes, the superhero Rogue, as well as alternate versions of her own self. With such a long career, Captain Marvel has had several important storylines. When discussing important moments in her history, you can have a look at her actual origin story. She had appeared for some time in Captain Marvel, acting as a friend and confidant for Philip Lawson, the Kree superhero known as Marvel. But a Kree robot goes a little crazy, and Marvel attempts to save Carol from an explosion. The result is that his energy is passed into her body, mutating her. This was her origin for some time, but it was later retconned so that Carol was actually a human-Kree hybrid. She returned as Miss Marvel, and Carol would then actually have her first case of amnesia, in that she was unaware of her heroic alter ego. A strange plot, to be sure. She would eventually learn of her heroic half and gain full control of her powers. Carol's career has also had major moments, which included the mutant known as Mystique, a constant villain to the X-Men franchise. After Carol's boyfriend is murdered by Mystique, she sets out to defeat the evil mutant and her team. But Mystique wouldn't take the defeat lying down and sent her daughter, Rogue, after Carol. Once again, this is the superhero known as Rogue that is in the X-Men, but she wasn't at this time. Rogue was younger at this time and didn't have full control of her powers. When she touched and drained Carol, she took all of her power and all of her memories, giving Carol a second bout of amnesia. She would work alongside the X-Men, with Charles Xavier helping return her memories, though he could do nothing about her powers. Captain Marvel would work alongside the X-Men for a time, joining them in space for several missions. The team was then captured by the Brood and Carol was experimented on. They combined her with the energy of a white star, and therefore she took on the persona of Binary. She continued to work with the X-Men with her new cosmic powers and would eventually return to Earth and learn of Marvel's death. Returning to space, she worked alongside the Starjammers for several more space adventures, eventually burning out her cosmic powers and returning her to Miss Marvel levels. She would then return to Earth again, taking up the mantle of Warbird, acting once more as an Avenger. She would then return to the role of Miss Marvel eventually, acting as an Avenger during some major Marvel events, such as Civil War and Avengers vs. X-Men. Then, she would take up the mantle of Captain Marvel. She would found the A-Force team and become the team leader of the Ultimates, heroes protecting the Earth from major cosmic threats. It was during the Second Civil War that Carol led her group of heroes against Tony Stark, believing that with the power of a precog, heroes should stop people before they actually have committed the crime. This would end when her side fights against Tony and Carol accidentally punches him into a coma. It is now in her present comics that Captain Marvel has begun to really interact with the magical side of the 616. While Carol might have dealt with some magical enemies in her time with the Avengers, she has not gone up against them much in her own series. One of the few times that magic has affected her was during the House of M event. After Scarlet Witch used her magical abilities to alter the very nature of the 616 universe, everyone is given what they most desire, with mutants becoming the leaders of the known world, while most non-mutants are treated as second-class citizens. Carol becomes the world's most popular non-mutant superhero, possibly because of her longtime friendship with Wanda. This is actually the first time that Carol takes up the mantle of Captain Marvel, though she continues to wear her Miss Marvel uniform. She would then join the rest of the Marvel heroes once they remember the change to reality and try to stop Wanda. Then in her own ongoing series, she's actually brought forward in time to the year 2052. The New World Order arc sees her brought to the future by Ov, the son of Prince Namor and the Enchantress, who believed that he needed her power to travel back in time so that he could take over. Carol fights alongside several heroes from her past, as well as the children of the fallen heroes, to stop Ov. But Carol is actually weak to magic, and Ov manages to travel back in time. Returning to her own proper time, she knows that Ov is hiding and is planning his attack. So, she realizes that she must find a way to fight against magic and goes to see Doctor Strange. Though he's apprehensive at first, he agrees to train her in the mystical arts. She actually adopts a new magical Captain Marvel uniform because of this, and she even adds a hood because wizards love hoods. She trains with Doctor Strange briefly before deciding that she needs training from the darker practitioners of the mystical arts. And in her most recent storylines, like we're talking early 2022, Carol has actually used her newfound powers to fight against Ov, cutting him off from his own magical abilities completely. Apparently, this was a major faux pas though. She actually finds herself captured by a magical tribunal of the most powerful mystics in the Marvel Universe and put on trial, with the idea that she shouldn't be Captain Marvel anymore. But that is literally the storyline that is happening right now, so that's as far as I can bring you. So what kind of cool magical stuff will Carol be getting into in the Midnight Suns? What powers will she have? What cool costumes? You'll have to check out Marvel's Midnight Suns to find out, and check back here as we continue to go through the history of the game's most important characters.